Betrayal always sneaks up on you with a tap at the door. For me, it hit at 11:52 p.m. on a chilly Wednesday in November, the air sharp with that early winter bite drifting through the quiet streets of Burlington, Vermont. I was in my garage, sanding down a steel component for a custom prosthetic arm, when Claire's voice sliced through 23 years of quiet. "Hey, Marcus, I need to come back." There she was on my doorstep, looking like she'd walked out of a magazine, dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than my truck's monthly payment. Her voice had that polished, therapy-honed softness you pick up in fancy recovery programs. Her hair was cropped neat, styled like she'd just left the salon, and her eyes had this practiced shine, like she'd rehearsed gratitude in front of a mirror. "Wyatt's inside," I said, not budging from the doorframe. "I know. I've been keeping an eye out." Those words landed like a kick to the gut. For 22 years, I'd raised that kid. 22 years since she left him with me, a backpack of baby stuff, and a scribbled note, "I'm not cut out for this. He's better off with you." Now here she was. And beneath her pricey perfume, I caught that faint, familiar whiff of desperation she couldn't quite mask. "I'm different now, Marcus. I've put in the real effort. Not just group sessions and catchphrases. I've got money, stability. I want to fix things." Parked in my driveway, a sleek gray Audi purred, its engine humming. Through the dark-tinted passenger window, I could make out a guy with neatly trimmed white hair, hands steady on the wheel. "Who's your buddy?" I asked. "Simon Caldwell. He's helping me get my life together." She brushed her fingers over a tiny silver pendant resting on her chest. "We're getting married soon. He wants to meet Wyatt properly." I'd heard of Simon Caldwell. He ran Apex Ventures, the outfit snapping up properties around Burlington for the last couple of years. Their signs were everywhere, promising high-end lofts and craft breweries where tire shops and dive bars used to sit. "Wyatt's 22 now," I said. "He decides for himself." "Of course, Marcus. I'm not here to steal him from you. I just want to be part of his world again. The three of us could be a real family." Something about how she said it made my stomach turn. Not because I didn't want Wyatt to have his mom back, I'd always hoped she'd get sober and show up, but her words felt like a script, like she'd run through them in Simon's fancy bathroom. "I'll talk to him," I said after a pause. She gave me a smile, and for a split second, I saw the woman I'd married 25 years ago, the one who'd dozed off on my arm while I read Wyatt bedtime stories about trains and pirates. "Thanks. We're staying at the Grandview Hotel on Maple Avenue for now, but Simon's eyeing houses nearby. Not too close, though. I don't want to crowd anybody." After she left, I slumped at my kitchen table, staring at the adoption papers I'd kept locked in a safe since 2001. The ones that made it official when Claire walked away from her son, leaving me as his legal dad. The ones signed in front of a notary and a witness who'd known her since grade school. The ones she was acting like never existed. Wyatt wandered downstairs around midnight, lured by the clatter of me brewing coffee I wasn't even gonna drink. "Was that Mom out there?" he asked. He hadn't called her Mom in years, but I could see that flicker in his eyes, the same mix of hope and fear he had at 4, waiting by the window for someone who never came. "Yeah, she wants to sit down with you. Says she's got money now, a fiancé who wants to meet you, the whole deal." Wyatt slid into the chair across from me, cradling a mug of coffee he was too young to need but too old to be told no about. "What's your take?" "I think," I said, choosing my words slowly, "people can turn things around, but you gotta be careful not to confuse change with honesty." "That's kind of vague, Dad." "Dad." He still called me that, even knowing I wasn't his blood. That meant something. Just don't rush into anything big without chewing it over first. And if something feels off, you come to me, no matter what anybody says about keeping things hush or sparing feelings. He nodded, but I could see the questions bubbling up, the ones he'd never asked out loud. Why'd she leave? Why'd she stay gone so long? And why now, when he was finally carving out his own path, was she ready to play Mom? The next morning, Claire called Wyatt straight. They met up for lunch at a swanky cafe on Church Street, the kind of place that took over Old Joe's Tavern after Simon's company bought the lot. When Wyatt got home that night, he was toting a bag from some boutique that doesn't bother with price tags. "She got you stuff?" I asked. "Just a few things. Said I've got good taste but been shopping at the wrong spots." He pulled out a jacket that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. "She's not what I expected." "How so?" Sharp. Put together. She knew about my courses, my internship at Apex Ventures. The internship. I'd forgotten Wyatt mentioned that, a part-time gig while he finished his finance degree at the University of Vermont. Just filing in spreadsheets for Simon's company. She's been keeping tabs on you? Not in a weird way. She had someone send her updates, report cards, articles from when I got on the dean's list. She's got this whole scrapbook. His voice softened. She teared up showing it to me. Of course she did. Claire always knew when to turn on the waterworks. What did you talk about? Everything. Her recovery, the mistakes she made, how bad she feels for leaving. And Simon, he's a big deal, Dad. His company's got projects all over Vermont. He said he could hook me up with a better gig after I graduate. Maybe even a shot at something bigger, like management or a partnership track if I show I've got what it takes. What it takes? I echoed, bristling at the idea there was anything wrong with the kind of mind that liked building things up instead of cashing in on tearing them down. That Saturday, Simon showed up at my place. Right at 3 p.m., he rapped on the door, decked out in a navy suit that looked improper now and fit like it was stitched just for him. When I swung the door open, he stuck out his hand with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never hearing no. Marcus Reed, it's a pleasure to finally meet you, he said, his grip steady but not overbearing, his smile warm but a little too perfect, like he'd practiced it in a mirror. He was a bit shorter than me, but he carried himself like he owned every room he walked into. Simon Caldwell, thanks for having me over, he said. Wyatt invited you. This is his house too. Absolutely. I brought a little something for you. He handed me a bottle of bourbon, the kind that costs more than my monthly grocery run, a gift that screamed money more than thoughtfulness. You didn't have to do that, I said. I know, but I wanted to kick things off on the right foot. Claire's told me so much about your family, what you've built here. I admire it. We settled in the living room while Wyatt fiddled with the coffee maker in the kitchen. Simon's eyes roamed the space, sizing up the built-in bookshelves I'd put up myself and the oak floors I'd sanded down when Wyatt was in middle school. Fine work, he said. You do this yourself? Most of it. You can see the care in it. That kind of craftsmanship is rare these days. Everything's cookie-cutter now, no heart. That's what my company's trying to bring back to places like this, quality, detail. By bulldozing what's already here. His smile didn't flicker. By keeping what's worth saving and upgrading the rest. Progress doesn't mean erasing everything, Marcus. Sometimes it's about giving folks better choices. Wyatt came in with the coffee, plopping down in the chair between us, like he was instinctively playing referee. Simon turned his focus to him, asking about his classes and dreams with this laser-sharp interest that made you feel like you were the only person in the universe. Your dad's raised a hell of a young man, he said to me, eyes still locked on Wyatt. Sharp, driven, but still got his feet on the ground. That's not common. He's always been a solid kid. More than solid. Special. The kind who could change things with the right shot. After Simon took off, Wyatt helped me clear the coffee mugs. He moved slowly, careful, like he was handling something delicate. So, what did you make of him? He asked. Seems like he's got it made. I wiped a mug dry, searching for words that wouldn't sound like I was just some paranoid dad. Guys that are slick usually have an angle. Be wary of deals that look too shiny. You think he's hiding something? He's a businessman. They always want something. The question is what, and whether you're okay paying the price. But I could see Wyatt pulling back, his shoulders stiff, his eyes giving me that look like I was being overly cautious. In one afternoon, Simon had done what I'd feared for 22 years, he made me feel like a small guy. Over the next few weeks, Claire and Simon became regulars in Wyatt's world. They took him to fancy dinners and art galleries in Burlington's South End. Simon paraded him around to clients and partners, treating him like a rising star, not just some intern. Claire bought him outfits and dragged him to pick out furniture for the place he was eyeing after graduation. And bit by bit, they started sowing doubts. It began with harmless questions. Had I ever told Wyatt about his birth dad? Did he know why Claire really split? What had I said about those early days when it was just us two? Then came the therapy buzzwords. Wyatt started tossing around terms like self-discovery and emotional closure. He talked about biological ties and inherited traits like he'd been handed a playbook. I'm thinking about one of those DNA ancestry tests, He mentioned one night over dinner. What for? Just curious about my roots, where my people come from. My people, not ours. I can tell you about your roots. Your grandma was Scottish. Your grandpa was Czech. Your great-uncle was a Korean War vet. I mean my biological side. Claire's side. Wyatt poked at his food, not eating. What did she say about your birth, Dad? Not much. Just that he was someone from before you. Someone who couldn't stick around. She say why? Said it was messy, that maybe one day, when I'm ready, she'll lay it all out. I put down my knife and looked at my son, because he's my son, no matter what DNA or paperwork says. Wyatt, listen. When your mom brought you to me, she signed legal papers making me your dad in every way that counts. She chose that. I didn't push her into it. She wanted you to have a steady home. I get that. Do you? Because it feels like you're holding something back. He stared at his plate, like it held the answers to questions he didn't know how to form. Simon says I might have siblings out there I don't know about. The words hit like a punch. Simon says. Not I wonder or I've been thinking. Simon says. What else does Simon say? Nothing bad. Just that sometimes people make choices that feel right at the time, but those can be revisited when things change. What kind of things? Like if someone gets their act together and wants to make things right. Or if they've got money and resources they didn't have back then. I caught a new edge in his voice, a hint of something Simon had slipped in, a suggestion that maybe those old papers weren't the full story, that there was more to Claire's choice than I'd let on. Money, not love or family or any real wish to be a parent. Money. That night, I dialed up Brenda Walsh. Brenda had handled Claire's finances back when she had cash to manage, and later mine when the garage started pulling in enough to need a pro. She was also the only person I'd kissed after my split from Claire, a one-time thing we both chalked up to too much bourbon and lonely nights. Marcus, been a minute, she said. I need a favor, Brenda. Can you dig into someone for me? This about Claire showing up in town? Small towns like Burlington, Vermont, word travels fast, especially when it involves flashy cars and public makeup scenes. Simon Caldwell, Apex Ventures. I need to know where his money's from and what he's really doing with my ex. That'll take time, and it won't be cheap. Whatever it costs. 3 days later, Brenda called me to meet at a coffee shop on Pine Street. She was already there, tucked in a corner booth with a thick folder and a mug of coffee gone cold. You're not gonna like this, she said, cutting straight to it. Lay it on me. Simon's business checks out. Apex Ventures has deals across Vermont, and his books are spotless. But his tie to Claire? That's where it gets murky. She slid a document across the table, bank statements showing monthly transfers of $6,000 from Apex Ventures to an account in Claire's name, labeled consulting fees, going back 9 months. No trace of what she was supposedly consulting on. How'd they hook up? Here's where it twists. Brenda pulled out another paper. Remember Claire's drug bust 5 years back? I did. Wyatt was 17, starting his last year of high school. Her mugshot hit the local news, and I had to reassure his friend's parents she wasn't a concern anymore. Simon bailed her out, covered her lawyer, and paid for her rehab. Why? Brenda's face tightened. Because she had dirt on you. She handed me copies of property deeds, zoning permits, and environmental reports, all tied to my neighborhood, my garage, and the small industrial strip where I'd built my business. Apex has been after your block for 2 years. They want to put up high-end lofts, but they need the whole area to make it work. Your garage is the last holdout. So they sent Claire to sweet-talk me into selling? It's deeper than that. Brenda slid over the final document, a draft employment contract naming Wyatt Reed as junior project associate with a salary 3 times what most grads dream of, plus stock options, bonuses, and a signing bonus that'd wipe out his student loans. They're not just buying him, Brenda said. They're grooming him. If Wyatt works for Apex, he'll have access to your books, your client contacts, your project plans, everything they need to either buy you out or run you into the ground. I stared at the contract, the fine print spelling out how they'd turn my son into their inside man. There's more, Brenda said, her voice low. That DNA test Wyatt mentioned? Simon already ran it. What? He got a sample somehow, probably hair or a swab from a glass. Results came back last week. My hands shook as I grabbed the paper she held out. Simon Caldwell was Wyatt's biological father. The words blurred, like they were written in some code I couldn't crack. Simon Caldwell, the guy showering my son with fancy clothes and big promises, the one who'd sent my ex to upend my life so he could claim the kid he'd ditched 22 years ago. How's that possible? Claire was with Simon before you married her. She was pregnant when you met, but she kept it quiet. The timeline lines up. She swore Wyatt was mine. She lied. Now she's back with Simon's cash and his big talk of redemption, painting you as the bad guy for standing in their way. I folded the papers and tucked them into my coat. What's your next move? Brenda asked. I'm gonna protect my son. Be careful, Marcus. These people have deep pockets and deeper connections. Go at them head on, and they'll crush you. They're already trying. The difference is, now I see it. That night, I sat in my garage until the sun came up, surrounded by the tools I'd spent 2 decades mastering, precision gear for building things that mattered, that helped people, that saved lives. Simon wanted to rip it all down for lofts that only the rich could afford. He wanted to mold Wyatt into a mini version of himself, smooth, cutthroat, hollow. But he'd miscalculated. He thought because I was quiet, I was soft. Because I built things instead of breaking them, I didn't know how to fight. He was dead wrong. The plan started forming, slow and steady, like piecing together a tricky blueprint. Simon's contract wasn't just a job offer, it hinted at a legal clause tying Wyatt's role to consulting on my property's valuation. If I didn't sell, they could leverage that to challenge my ownership, claiming conflicts of interest. I wasn't just fighting for my son, I was fighting to keep everything I'd built. You start with the goal, then map out every step to get there. You spot the weak points, the places where things could break, and test each piece until you're sure it'll hold up under strain. Then, when the moment's right, you apply just enough pressure to make the whole thing fall apart exactly how you planned. First, I had to shield Wyatt from the truth until I could lay it bare properly. That meant letting him think Simon was just a big-hearted mentor and Claire was a recovering soul trying to reconnect with her kid. Second, I needed hard proof of Simon's real scheme, corporate games, fraud, emotional tricks, all documented tight enough to stand up in court. Third, I had to make sure when the truth hit, it hit like a flood, undeniable and impossible to spin. And last, I had to brace myself to lose everything, even Wyatt, to keep him from turning into something he'd regret becoming. I started by setting up a security system at home. Nothing flashy, just small cameras and mics tucked in spots where Simon and Claire might talk privately, thinking I wasn't around. I told Wyatt it was because of some burglaries in Burlington's Old North End, which wasn't a lie. Then I started logging everything, every chat, every gift, every slick promise Simon made, every therapy buzzword Claire tossed out to excuse her absence and comeback. Every time Wyatt echoed something they'd clearly fed him, I noted it. The toughest part was acting like nothing was wrong, smiling when Simon praised my work, nodding when Claire went on about healing and second chances, pretending to be grateful when they looped me into their plans for Wyatt's future. But I'd spent 22 years putting my son first. I could keep up the act a bit longer. The break came 3 weeks later when Claire brought Simon over for dinner. I'd spent the day cooking Wyatt's favorite, slow-roasted brisket with onions and mashed potatoes, my mom's old recipe from when I was his age. Over dinner, Simon started asking about my work, zeroing in with questions about my clients, contracts, and growth plans. They sounded friendly but felt like a cross-examination. Business seems solid, he said, slicing his brisket with precision. Wyatt says you've got deals with a few medical tech firms. A couple. That's no small feat. That market's tough to crack. You must have some special skills. I do honest work. No doubt. But skill's only half the game. You need contacts, clout, the ability to scale up when orders pile in. Ever thought about teaming up with a bigger outfit? Not really. You should. Medical tech's booming, AI diagnostics, robotic implants, custom prosthetics. Demand for precision work like yours is about to skyrocket. A small shop like yours could cash in big with the right partner. Claire shot me a smile across the table. Simon's been so helpful with his advice. He really wants what's best for our family. Our family, like she'd been part of it all these years. After dinner, while I was stacking plates in the dishwasher, I overheard Simon and Claire in the living room, their voices picked up clear as day by the new mics. He's tougher to crack than you said, Simon muttered, sounding annoyed. Give it time, Claire replied. Marcus moves slow, but when he commits, he's all in. Time's tight. The zoning board meets in 5 weeks, and I need that property locked down before then. What about Wyatt? He's close to signing the contract. But Wyatt's not the main prize. I need Marcus to sell willingly or give me leverage to force it. The environmental audit next month should give us an angle, but it'd be smoother if he just took the deal. And if he doesn't? Simon's chuckle was ice cold. Then we go to Plan B. You file for shared custody of Wyatt, claiming Marcus hid your parental rights and blocked you from your son. We'll show he's controlling, maybe dig up some dirt on his temper. We don't have dirt on his temper. We'll make some. Lena's been tracking his dealings with suppliers, looking for anything that could look aggressive. If that's not enough, we can plan a few social media posts, anonymous tips about hostile behavior at his shop. Lena, Simon's assistant, the quiet brunette from their dinner party last week, the one who kept glancing at her phone like she was waiting for bad news. This feels like too much, Claire said, and for a second, she sounded like the woman I'd married, not the performer she'd turned into. Too much? Simon snapped. Do you want your son back or not? Do you want him to have a future, or spend his life stuck in this dead-end town tinkering in a garage? I want what's best for him. Then trust me. I've built an empire knowing what's best for people, even when they can't see it. I saved the recording and went back to the dishes, my hands steady even as anger burned in my gut. Plan B. They'd always known I might not bite on their shiny offers. But I had a plan too, and mine wasn't gonna fail. The next morning, I called in sick and drove to Montpelier. I'd lined up 3 meetings with folks who owed me favors or had no love for Simon's shady deals. First was Greg Porter, a building inspector who'd been sidelined after refusing to greenlight one of Apex's projects without proper soil tests. Next was Karen Way, a property lawyer who'd faced legal threats for defending homeowners against Simon's company. Last was Detective Mike Vargas, who'd looked into Simon for fraud a couple of years back but couldn't make the case stick. By sundown, I had enough to torch Simon's reputation and his business. The challenge was timing it so Wyatt would see the truth before signing that contract. But when I got home that night, I found Wyatt in the kitchen, pen in hand, the contract spread out on the table. Dad, you're just in time. Wyatt wanted me to see it before he put his name on the dotted line. The contract was even sweeter than the draft Brenda had shown me, signing bonus, stock shares, a company truck, and health coverage that'd extend to Wyatt and any family he might have down the road. It's a solid deal, I said, treading carefully. It's unreal, Wyatt shot back, eyes lit up. Simon says this is just the start. If I prove myself in a couple years, I could be heading my own team by 30. What kind of team? Property acquisition and development. Scouting undervalued lots, cutting deals, managing rehabs, basically what Simon does, but in smaller markets. Smaller markets like Burlington's North End, where folks had built lives they couldn't just replace. You looked at other companies? Other paths? Wyatt's face tightened, defensive. Why would I? Simon's handing me exactly what I want, better pay, better benefits than anywhere else. Sometimes a great offer is just someone seeing what you're worth. His tone turned sharp, frustrated. Why can't you just be happy for me? I am, Wyatt. I just want you making this call for the right reasons. What's that mean? I looked at my son, no matter what blood said, and knew my time was up. Simon had moved faster than I'd figured, and Wyatt was inches from signing away his future before I could show him what that future really held. It means Simon Caldwell isn't who you think. Neither is your mom. What are you on about? I grabbed the folder from the safe Brenda had given me, bank statements, property records, job contracts, DNA results. Proof of a scheme set in motion months before Claire showed up at my door. Simon's your biological father. He's been paying your mom to come back and pull you into his company. They want you to snoop on me so they can force me to sell my garage. Wyatt stared at the papers like they were in another language. No way that's true. Check the dates. The bank transfers. The DNA test Simon ran without you knowing. You're lying. Those words cut deeper than a blade. 22 years of raising him, loving him, putting him first, and he thought I'd make this up. Why would I lie? Because you're jealous. Simon can give me things you can't. You want me stuck here, slaving in your garage, trapped in this town with nothing bigger. Wyatt, that's not it. I'm done with you trying to wreck my shop because you're scared of being alone. He snatched the contract and pen, signing his name with hard, angry strokes. There. I start Monday. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows shook. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the evidence I'd been too slow to use. All my planning, all my careful moves, and Simon had outplayed me by doing what I never saw coming. He'd turned my son against me. But this wasn't over. Simon won this round, but he'd gotten cocky, showing too much of his hand. I knew what I had to do next. The next phase needed patience and precision. Simon thought he'd won because Wyatt signed the contract. But a contract's just paper. What mattered was what happened once Wyatt started at Apex Ventures. Over the weekend, I upgraded the surveillance at home and the garage, not just cameras and mics now, but network monitors to track every device that hit my Wi-Fi. If Simon was using Wyatt to swipe my business data, I'd catch every move. Monday morning, Wyatt left for his first day, dressed in the sharp suit Claire bought him, carrying a leather briefcase worth more than my monthly rent. He didn't say a word. That afternoon, Lena Bryce, Simon's assistant, showed up. She was younger than I'd thought, maybe mid-30s, with the jittery vibe of someone running on too much coffee and not enough rest. She knocked at exactly 2 p.m., when she knew Wyatt would be at work and I'd be in the garage. Mr. Reed, I'm Lena Bryce from Apex Ventures. Can we talk? Her hands shook as she spoke. About what? Simon? What he's really after with me and Wyatt. Whatever Simon had done to rattle her this bad, it went way beyond corporate games. Come inside. We sat in the living room, and Lena pulled out a tablet packed with files, bank records showing payments to private investigators who'd been tailing me and Wyatt for months, audio of Simon plotting to tank my business if I didn't sell, even logs of failed hacking attempts on my shop's servers. Photos of my house, my garage, my daily routine. He's been at this for over a year, she whispered. Ever since he learned about Wyatt. How'd he find out? Claire's drug arrest 5 years ago. Simon was scoping the area for development and saw her name in the police blotter. When he realized she had a son raised by someone else, he saw a way in. A way to what? Control. Simon doesn't just want your property, Mr. Reed. He wants Wyatt. He's convinced Wyatt's wasting his potential with you, that he deserves better. She gave a bitter laugh. He's not saving him, he's collecting him. Simon hoards people like trophies, talented folks who make him look good and make him rich. What about you? You one of his trophies? Her face fell, and for a moment, I saw the hurt beneath the polished exterior. I was, for 3 years. I thought he cared about me, that we were building something real. Then I found out about Claire, the plan for Wyatt, and all the other women he's strung along. Why tell me? Because what he's doing to you and Wyatt, he did to me and my daughter. She was 17 when he offered to cover her college tuition, as long as she studied business and joined his company after. Lena's voice cracked as she told me about her daughter. She took her own life last year. Overdose in her dorm, the night before she was set to sign her contract with Apex. She swallowed hard. Her note said she couldn't stomach what they'd asked her to do. The room went dead silent. Outside, I could hear cars humming along Cherry Street in Burlington's South End, regular folks living their regular lives, clueless that predators like Simon prowled among them, dressed in tailored suits and speaking with that polished, therapy-trained charm. I'm so sorry, I said, because what else could I say? Simon ruined my family, Mr. Reed. Don't let him ruin yours. After Lena left, I holed up in my garage, listening to the recordings she'd handed over. Hours of Simon's voice, cold and calculated, laying out how to twist people's weaknesses, how to weaponize their love for their kids. It hit me that this wasn't just about cash or land or business deals. It was about control, remaking lives to fit his vision of the world. To Simon, people were pawns, useful only for what they could do for him. He saw Wyatt and thought his potential was wasted in a small town with a guy like me. He saw me as a roadblock to bulldoze. But he'd made the classic mistake of powerful men, thinking quietly meant weak, that building things meant I didn't know how to break them. He was about to find out how wrong he was. Over the next 2 weeks, I built a plan as clean and precise as a well-crafted engine. Instead of trying to convince Wyatt that Simon was a liar, which would only make me look like a desperate dad, I'd let Simon unravel himself. I started by giving Wyatt full access to my business records. Not the half-baked stuff Simon hoped to steal through sneaky corporate games, but the real deal. I told Wyatt I wanted him to understand the garage in case anything ever happened to me. "That's grim, Dad," he said. "It's practical. You're 22, stepping into business development. You should know how a real shop runs, not just the corporate side." So, Wyatt spent his nights digging into profit margins, cash flow, and the client relationships I'd built over 20 years, learning the care it takes to craft parts for life-saving prosthetics. What he didn't know was that I was slipping in strategic truths, not lies. I'd never lie to my son, details about new contracts that'd make Simon's mouth water, plans that inflated the garage's value on paper. And I quietly tracked every move Simon made to pull that info from Wyatt. It started small, offhand questions about my client list over their weekly dinners, asking for contract copies so Wyatt could study the industry, suggestions to leave his laptop open at home for Simon to review my business model. Every request was caught by my surveillance gear, every word saved to encrypted drives backed up in multiple safe spots. Each time Simon pushed harder, I fed Wyatt just a bit more to share. The trap was clicking into place. Simon was so fixated on his prize he didn't see how easy I was making it. But I needed more than proof of corporate games. I needed Simon to show his true colors in a way Wyatt couldn't brush off. The chance came 3 weeks into Wyatt's job when Simon invited us to dinner at his place. He lived in a sprawling estate overlooking Lake Champlain, the kind of house that ends up in glossy magazines and makes regular folks feel tiny just stepping inside. Everything was pristine, polished granite floors, sleek leather couches, walls hung with abstract art that probably cost more than my house. Claire played the perfect hostess, floating through rooms in a dress worth more than my wardrobe combined. She hugged me when I arrived, gushing over the cheap bottle of wine I brought, acting like we were old buddies instead of exes who hadn't spoken in 23 years. "Marcus, you've got to see Simon's office," she said. "He's got some art you'd love." Simon's office was a monument to his ego, walls lined with awards and photos of deals going back 15 years. But what caught my eye was a locked file cabinet in the corner, papers peeking out, labeled with project codes that matched ones from Lena's files, hints of shady permits and backroom deals. Simon pointed to a scale model of gleaming high-rises and shops. "That's the Willow District in Montpelier," he said. "We took it over in 2019. Used to be warehouses and small factories. What happened to the businesses there? Progress. We moved the ones worth keeping and phased out the rest. Now it's a booming mixed-use hub, property values up 300%. Moved. Phased out. Like the people who'd worked there were just clutter to clear. And this," he said, gesturing to another model, "is what we're planning for your neighborhood." The model showed my corner of Burlington transformed, gone were the small shops and old houses, replaced by luxury lofts, upscale boutiques, and a corporate tower looming over it all. "Where's my garage in this?" Simon's smile was sharp, professional. "We'd relocate you to our new industrial zone outside town. Better setup, more space, closer to shipping routes. A total upgrade. And if I don't want to move? Why wouldn't you? The new spot's got everything you need, plus room to grow and modern systems." But his eyes told the real story. My choice wasn't part of his equation. Over dinner, Simon held court, spinning tales about his latest ventures and Apex Ventures' plans to push into new markets. He went on about Wyatt's potential, the big opportunities waiting for him, the need to break free from small-town limits. "A guy like Wyatt's wasting his gifts in a place like Burlington," he said, slicing his steak with a surgeon's precision. "He should be in Seattle or Miami, somewhere that'll push him to grow." "I like Burlington," Wyatt said, his voice calm but firm. "Sure, it's home," Simon replied, leaning back. "But home can box you in, especially when you've got big dreams." Claire nodded like she was in on a sermon. "Simon's got a point. I spent too many years playing it safe, sticking to what felt comfortable instead of chasing what I really wanted." "And what was that?" I asked, my tone sharper than I meant. She waved a hand around the dining room. "This. Security, a solid foundation, a chance to give my son a real future. My son, not our son, not Wyatt. Like I'd just been a placeholder all these years." After dinner, while Claire showed Wyatt the art collection in the living room, Simon asked me to step out onto the balcony. The view was stunning, Lake Champlain stretching out under the stars, lights from boats and distant buildings flickering like fireflies. "Gorgeous, right?" Simon said, lighting a cigar with a silver lighter that probably cost more than my truck. Something about water puts things in perspective. Makes your problems feel small. Is that what this is? Perspective? It's a talk between two guys who want what's best for Wyatt. And what's that, in your eyes? Simon took a slow pull on his cigar, choosing his words like he was setting a trap. Opportunity. A chance to see how the world really works. To build something big, not just keep things ticking along. You mean work for you? With me. There's a difference. He turned to face me, his eyes hard. Marcus, let's cut to it. I could make this messy. I've got lawyers who could dig into Wyatt's adoption papers, find holes. Investigators who could turn up dirt on your business, maybe that old tax issue from '98 you thought was buried. I've got friends in high places who owe me. But I'd rather keep this clean. Keep what clean? The handover. Claire's his biological mom, I'm his biological dad. We can give him doors you can't open, resources you don't have. It's not personal, it's just how it is. The mask was off. No more talk of family or redemption. This was about claiming ownership. And if I don't go along with this handover? Simon's smile was icy, calculated. Then we do it the hard way. Claire files for custody, says you've been blocking her from her son. We'll show you're controlling, stifling Wyatt's choices, holding him back out of jealousy. What proof do you have? The proof we make. A few recorded chats like this one, edited just right. Some statements from suppliers who've seen you get heated. Maybe a story or two about that tax issue resurfacing to paint you as unstable. He was threatening me, standing there with his fancy cigar, staring out over the lake, ready to tear my bond with my son apart if I didn't step aside. You've got this all figured out. I always do. That's why I'm where I am, and you're not. That was his second mistake. His first was underestimating me. His second was laying bare how far he'd go to win. What makes you think Wyatt wants this? He's already chosen. He signed the contract, he's working for me, living the life I'm offering, not the one you gave him. He's 22. Kids that age screw up. They also know a better deal when they see it. Simon dropped his cigar, crushing it under his heel, a move that felt both casual and menacing. I respect you, Marcus. You're a decent guy who did his best in a tough spot. But your role in Wyatt's story is done. The sooner you get that, the easier this'll be. Back inside, I found Wyatt and Claire on the leather couch, flipping through a photo album. Pictures of Claire as a young woman, before the drugs, before she walked out, before 23 years of silence. Check this out, Claire said, pointing to a shot of her holding a baby. You were 6 months old, just figuring out how to sit up. Wyatt studied it like he was trying to crack a code. I don't remember any of this. Of course not, but I do. Every milestone, every first word, every night I stayed up wondering if I was doing right by you. It was a hell of a show, the devoted mom, torn away by hard times, now back to reclaim her son. What Wyatt didn't know, what Simon had probably told her to hide, was that the baby in the picture wasn't him. The kid in the photo wasn't Wyatt. The face was off, the hair a different shade, and the timestamp in the corner was from 2 years before Wyatt was born. Claire was showing him pictures of some other child, probably from another life she'd wrecked and walked away from. But to Wyatt, hungry for a tie to the mom he never knew, it looked like proof she'd cared all along. We should head out, I said, keeping my voice low. Already? Claire's tone hit just the right note of disappointment. We were just getting to the best shots. It's late, and Wyatt's got work tomorrow. In the truck, Wyatt stayed quiet for the first few miles, staring out at Burlington's city lights flickering by. So, what did you think? He asked finally. About what? Dinner. Simon's plans for the neighborhood. I think Simon gets what Simon wants, no matter what anyone else thinks. That's not fair. He's trying to help people, make things better. By tearing down what's there and building something pricier. Maybe some things need replacing. Maybe some folks are just scared of change. We drove home in silence, the gap between us widening. Simon's poison was sinking in, slow but sure, turning my son into someone who saw me as a roadblock instead of a partner. That night, I replayed the balcony talk with Simon. His threats were crystal clear, his game plan laid bare. He was set to ruin me, using my own son as a tool, but he'd also handed me the ammo to take him down first. The next morning, I called Brenda Walsh and asked her to meet me at the garage. When she showed up, I gave her a flash drive packed with every scrap of evidence I collected over the past month. "What's this?" she asked. "Insurance. If something happens to me, arrest, accident, or I vanish, make sure these get to the right people." "Marcus, what's your play here?" "I'm saving Wyatt from the biggest mistake of his life by exposing who his biological father really is." Brenda studied me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You're letting Simon hang himself?" "I'm giving him all the rope he needs." Over the next week, I rolled out the final piece of my plan. I started slipping up, small mistakes at first, then bigger ones. Missed deadlines, parts shipped slightly off spec, ignored calls from key clients. To anyone watching, it looked like I was buckling under stress: Claire's return, the fear of losing Wyatt, the pressure of Simon's company circling my garage. Simon picked up on it right away. At his weekly dinners with Wyatt, he started dropping concerned remarks about my work slipping. He suggested the strain might be too much, that maybe I should step back from running the shop. "Your dad's a good guy," he told Wyatt, "but he's not getting younger, and he's not built for the kind of business challenges you face today." Wyatt came home from those dinners worried, asking if I was okay, if I needed a doctor, if he could help with the garage. "I'm fine," I said. "Just sorting through some hiccups." But I saw the doubt in his eyes. Simon was planting seeds, making Wyatt question if I could still handle my life, let alone a business employing a dozen folks and serving clients across 3 states. The showdown came on a cold Friday afternoon in November when Simon made his big move. He showed up at my garage with Vance Holt, his head of security, a guy who looked like he'd learned people skills in a boot camp. No call, no appointment, just strolled in like they owned the place. "Marcus, we need to talk," Simon said. My crew glanced up from their machines, picking up on the tension. I nodded toward my office, and Simon and Vance followed. "Shut the door," Simon said. I closed it and faced them. Simon wore his slickest smile, but Vance stood like he was ready to throw punches if needed. "I've been patient," Simon started, "but there's a limit." He leaned forward. "You've had 6 weeks to take my offer. Instead, you're playing games." "What games?" "The cameras in your house, the fake financials you're feeding Wyatt, the emails you've sent to investigators sniffing around my business." He knew. Somehow, Simon had cracked my plan wide open, even tracking my emails to Brenda, which meant he was sharper and more dangerous than I'd thought. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." Simon pulled out his phone and played a recording of my talk with Brenda at the coffee shop, where she'd shown me proof of his scheme to use Wyatt against me. "How'd you get that?" "I get what I need, Marcus. That's what winners do." Vance shifted, blocking the door, a clear signal this chat wasn't ending till Simon said so. "Here's the deal," Simon went on. "You sell me your property at my first offer. You move your shop to the industrial zone outside town. And you stop meddling in my relationship with my son. Wyatt's my son. Wyatt's my blood, raised by my fiancée, working for my company. Those adoption papers you're so proud of? Just ink on a page. They don't change DNA or reality. The truth is, I've been Wyatt's dad for 22 years while you've been a ghost." Simon stepped closer, his voice dropping to that fake reasonable tone folks use when they're making demands they know are out of line. "I don't want to ruin you, Marcus. I don't want to drag you through the mud or make your life hell. I just want you to bow out quietly and let the next generation step up. And if I don't? Then Vance and I will have a very different talk with you next week. No offers, no negotiations, just consequences." It was a straight-up threat, delivered with the smooth confidence of a guy who'd made good on threats before. "I need time to think it over. You've got till Monday. After that, we stop playing nice." After they left, I sat in my office, staring at a photo on my desk, Wyatt at his high school graduation, beaming in his cap and gown, arms slung around my shoulders. He'd been so proud that day, so pumped for what lay ahead, so grateful for everything I'd done to get him there. Now Simon was twisting that future against me, turning my son's drive into a tool to crush the man who'd raised him. But Simon had made his third and final mistake. He'd threatened me in my own garage, with a witness who could back up every word. It was time to spring the trap. That evening, I called Wyatt and asked him to swing by the garage. I told him I had something critical to show him, something that'd shape both our futures. He showed up 20 minutes later, still in the fancy suit and tie Claire had bought him, looking like he belonged in Simon's world, not mine. "What's this about, Dad?" I led him to my office, shut the door, and fired up my laptop. You need to hear this. I played the recordings I collected over the past 6 weeks. First was Simon and Claire in my living room, hashing out Plan B, the custody grab, the faked evidence of my controlling behavior, the plot to smear my name. Wyatt's face went white as he heard Simon call me a hurdle to be cleared from his son's life. Next was the balcony talk, where Simon laid out his real intentions and made his first threat. Last was today's showdown in my office, with Vance's looming presence and Simon's ultimatum, complete with a hint about digging up a fake ordinance violation on my shop to force me out. When the recordings stopped, Wyatt sat with his head in his hands, staring at the floor like it held answers to a riddle he couldn't crack. He's been lying to me, he said, voice barely above a whisper. About everything. The job, the mentorship, the opportunities, it was all a setup. It was all to turn you against me so he could get my property and my business. Wyatt looked up, his eyes heavier than they'd been an hour ago. What do we do now? We give Simon what he's got coming. The plan I laid out for Wyatt was simple but brutal. Instead of selling to Simon or slugging it out in court, we'd expose him in a way that'd tank his reputation and his company in one shot. First, we'd leak the recordings to local news outlets, along with Brenda's financial documents showing Simon's history of fraud and manipulation. Second, we'd file criminal charges for extortion, conspiracy, and attempted corporate espionage. Third, we'd sue Apex Ventures for damages, using the recordings to prove a calculated campaign to ruin my business. Finally, we'd make sure every client, investor, and local official Simon had schmoozed over the years knew exactly what kind of man they were dealing with. It'll destroy him, Wyatt said. He was set to destroy us. The difference is, we've got the truth. What about Mom? That was the toughest part. Claire was in deep with Simon's scheme, but she was also a woman who'd been used by a guy with more money and power than she'd ever had. Your mom made her choice when she took Simon's cash and lied about your childhood. She'll have to face the fallout. Wyatt went quiet, wrestling with everything I'd shown him. I can't believe I signed that contract, he said at last. You did. Now you'll quit. No, I'll stay on until we're ready to strike. We need someone inside Apex to catch any moves Simon makes to cover his tracks or lean on witnesses once he sees what's coming. You're okay spying on him? I'm protecting us and building a stronger case. Come Monday, I didn't blink at Simon's deadline. I went to work like always, hit my deadlines, and acted like our office clash never happened. Simon called twice, leaving voicemails that got angrier each time. Vance showed up at the garage, but he turned tail when he spotted the new security cameras I'd put up over the weekend. By Wednesday, Simon was mad enough to slip up big time. He called Wyatt into a meeting and tried to turn him against me, showing him faked proof of my so-called financial troubles and mental breakdown. Doctored bank statements, made up medical records, and paid off witnesses claiming I'd been acting erratic. It was slick enough to fool someone who didn't know better. What Simon didn't know was Wyatt was recording every word. Your dad's falling apart, Simon told him, spreading the forged papers across his desk. The pressure of our deals pushed him past his limit. Look at these, medical bills for anxiety meds, antidepressants, ER trips for panic attacks. Even a letter from a client accusing him of fudging invoices. Wyatt stared at the documents, his face looking like he was seeing his worst nightmares come true. I didn't know it was this bad. It's worse than bad, it's risky. A guy in his state shouldn't be running machines or making decisions that affect other people's jobs. What are you saying? Someone's gotta step up for his well-being. Someone who cares but isn't too close to the mess. You mean me? I mean pros, doctors, lawyers, folks who handle cases like this. Simon was pushing to have me locked away, not just pushed out of my business or cut off from my son, but labeled crazy and stuck in some facility where I couldn't fight back. There are private clinics for this kind of thing, Simon went on. Quiet places where he'd get help without the embarrassment of a public hearing. How do you know about those? I've handled this before. Partners who turned into liabilities, employees who cracked under the pressure. It's more common than you'd think. Other people. Simon had pulled this on others, wrecked their lives when they got in his way. What about the garage? Wyatt asked. It'd need new blood, someone younger, steadier, with fresh ideas to compete in today's market. Someone like me? Exactly like you. The recording cut off there, but it was plenty. Simon had laid out his whole game, not just grabbing my property and my son, but having me declared unfit so I'd be out of the picture for good. That night, Wyatt and I sat down with Brenda Walsh and Detective Mike Vargas to map out our next steps. We had enough to bury Simon's career and land him in jail, but we had to time it right to stop him from shredding evidence or skipping town. We hit him Friday, Vargas said. Criminal charges first, then civil lawsuits, then media blast. By the time Simon knows what's up, he won't have a chance to cover his tracks. What about Mom? Wyatt asked, his voice tight. Claire's getting arrested as an accomplice, Vargas said softly. She took money for fraud and conspiracy. The DA might cut a deal if she flips, but she's facing charges. Wyatt nodded, but I saw the hurt in his eyes. No matter what Claire had done, she was still his mom, and losing her again was gonna sting. I'm sorry, I told him. Don't be. She made her bed. Friday morning came cold and gray, with a November wind that cut right through you. I got to the garage early, double-checking the security cams and going over the evidence files one last time. At 9 a.m. sharp, Vargas and 2 other cops walked into Apex Ventures' offices with arrest warrants for Simon Caldwell and Claire Reed. At the same moment, federal agents rolled in with search warrants for Simon's house, office, and bank accounts. Right on cue, every major news outlet in Vermont got copies of the recordings proving Simon's conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and attempted coercion. I watched it all go down on live TV from my office, surrounded by my crew, who'd been wondering for weeks why I'd seemed so off. Simon was let out of his building in cuffs, his tailored suit rumpled, his white hair a mess. He looked smaller, like the weight of consequences he never saw coming had shrunk him down. Claire was nabbed at the upscale spa in Burlington's South End where she got her weekly manicure, the kind that costs more than most folks spend on groceries in a month. News cameras caught her being led to a police cruiser, hands covering her face, her polished new image falling apart in real time. Wyatt watched from Apex Ventures' offices, where federal agents were questioning him about his role in Simon's scheme, a role he didn't even know he'd played. He'd quit that morning, handing over his company laptop and badge without a fuss. By nightfall, the story was all over Vermont's local news. Top developer busted in extortion plot, the headline screamed. Corporate bigshot accused of fraud and conspiracy. The details were ugly: Simon's habit of targeting small business owners who wouldn't sell, his use of private investigators and paid snitches to dig up dirt, his web of corrupt officials and scared witnesses. At the heart of it all were the recordings proving he'd been ready to tear a family apart for a piece of land worth less than his car collection. Within a week, Apex Ventures was bankrupt. Investors bailed, political allies cut ties, and clients dropped contracts like hot coals. Simon's empire, built over 15 years, crumbled in days. Claire got out on bail after agreeing to testify against Simon, spilling details about a past scheme where he tried to tank a local bakery to clear space for a project. But her redemption act was shot. Everyone now knew the reformed mom was a paid player in a plot to scam the man who'd raised her son. Simon stayed locked up, his wealth and global connections making him a flight risk, despite his lawyer's endless motions. The evidence was airtight. 3 months later, I sat in a Montpelier courtroom as Simon pleaded guilty to conspiracy, extortion, and attempted fraud. The judge gave him 7 years in federal prison, calling out how his crimes preyed on families and endangered kids. Claire got probation and community service for cooperating, but she skipped town right after sentencing. Word was she landed in Oregon, working as a waitress at a diner near the coast. Wyatt finished his degree and chose to stay in Burlington. He took a job with a legit development firm focused on restoring old buildings, not bulldozing them. On weekends, he helped out at my garage, picking up the precision skills needed to craft prosthetic components, skills that'd serve him no matter where life took him. We never brought up Simon's claim about being his biological father. The DNA test was probably legit, but it didn't matter. Blood's just genes. Family's what you forge through years of showing up, loving hard, and sticking it out when things get tough. One evening in April, as we locked up the garage, Wyatt asked if I ever wished I'd just sold to Simon and walked away instead of fighting. Do you wish I had? I asked. No. I wish I hadn't bought his lies, but I'm glad I learned the truth. Then I don't regret it either. We walked home through the North End, the neighborhood Simon wanted to flatten for fancy lofts. The old houses still stood. The mom and pop shops still served their customers. The folks who'd built lives here were still living them. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds look stacked against you. Some people are worth protecting, even when they don't see the danger. And sometimes, a quiet guy with steady hands and old-school values is just the one to take down a monster. Simon thought he could spark a fire and control it. But fire's got its own rules, its own hunger, its own sense of what's right. If you're patient and careful, you can teach that fire to burn exactly where you want. And we did.